Emma had always believed that love, when built on trust and small kindnesses, could weather anything. She and Daniel had been married for 12 years. And in those years, they'd built a life that looked steady from the outside. A cozy house in Portland, 2 golden retrievers who followed them everywhere, and a peaceful routine that never seemed to change. They had morning coffee together, exchanged tired smiles after long work days, and spent weekends fixing things around the house. It was comfortable, predictable, safe. But sometimes even safety can start to feel like distance. Over the past few months, Emma had noticed something shifting in Daniel. It wasn't anything loud or dramatic. It was quieter, like the way his eyes wandered to the window during dinner, or how he would stop mid-conversation and stare at nothing for a few seconds. He still loved her. She knew that. But there was a part of him that seemed far away, as if he were chasing thoughts she couldn't reach. It was a rainy Tuesday evening when it finally happened. The kind of night when the world outside felt wrapped in gray silence. They sat by the fireplace, the sound of soft rain tapping against the windows. Emma was reading, Daniel was staring into the flames. Something about the stillness made her look up. His face was thoughtful, but there was also pain there, the kind that comes from holding something inside for too long. "Daniel," she said gently, "you've been quiet lately. Is something wrong?" He didn't answer right away. He poked the fire, watching the sparks rise, then sighed as if releasing a weight he had carried for years. "Emma," he said finally, his voice calm but heavy, "there's something I've wanted to say for a long time." Emma's heart skipped. "What is it?" she asked. He looked at her, his blue eyes uncertain. "I have a wish," he said quietly. "Something I never got to do before. Life got busy before us, before everything. And lately, I can't stop thinking about it." Emma felt the warmth drain from her fingers. His tone wasn't angry, just distant. She wasn't sure whether to be scared or curious. "A wish," she repeated, trying to smile. "Like what? A new project? A trip? What do you mean?" He smiled faintly, but it was a tired smile. "I don't even know how to explain it. It's not about work or success. It's just something I've always wanted to experience. I thought I could forget it, but I can't. And I don't want to live the rest of my life wondering what it would have been like." Emma set her book aside. The sound of rain grew louder, almost filling the silence between them. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "I didn't want to hurt you," he said softly. "I didn't want you to think I wasn't happy here. I am. You've given me more than I ever hoped for. But lately, I wake up and feel like I'm missing something. Not from you, not from us, but from myself." His words hit her harder than she expected. It wasn't rejection, but it sounded dangerously close to it. The man she loved was standing right in front of her, but somehow, he was already halfway gone. She wanted to ask him what exactly he wished for, but she didn't. Something in his eyes told her he wasn't ready to say it yet. Maybe he was scared that once the words came out, there'd be no turning back. The firelight flickered across his face, painting soft orange shadows across the room. Emma leaned back, her mind spinning. She tried to remind herself that love wasn't about control. People change. Dreams shift. But still, her heart ached with the quiet fear that his dream might take him away from her. After a long silence, Daniel reached for her hand. His grip was warm and steady. "Emma," he said, "please don't think I'm unhappy with you. That's not what this is. You're the best part of my life. But there's a piece of me that feels unfinished. I keep thinking, if I don't do this now, when will I?" Her throat tightened. "And what if your wish changes everything between us?" He looked at her sadly. "I don't want it to. I just don't want to grow old wondering what might have been. I think that kind of regret could destroy me." Emma didn't know what to say. There was no script for this, no advice for what to do when the person you love says they need something you can't yet understand. She tried to read his face, hoping to find reassurance, but all she saw was truth, raw and unpolished. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't running from her. He was just lost in a question he couldn't stop asking himself. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. The only sound was the rain and the soft crackle of wood. Emma stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the dark street. She could see their reflection in the glass, two people standing side by side, yet both looking in different directions. She remembered the day they'd met at a bookstore downtown, both reaching for the same novel. He had smiled at her then, a kind of confident warmth that had drawn her in immediately. They had fallen in love quickly, built a life faster than they had planned. There had never been time for the what-ifs. Maybe that was what he was feeling now, the weight of all the things they had never stopped to do. After a moment, she turned back to him. "You've always supported my dreams, Daniel," she said softly. "Whatever this is, I'll listen. I don't know how I'll feel about it yet, but I'll listen." He looked relieved, but also pained. "Thank you," he whispered. "That means more than you know." The fire had nearly died down. Emma added another log, watching it catch flame. She felt both close to him and miles apart at the same time. That night, as they went to bed, neither of them spoke much. Daniel fell asleep quickly, his breathing calm and steady. But Emma lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His words kept replaying in her mind, a wish I've never asked for. Something that makes me feel alive again. Alive. That was the word that stayed with her. Wasn't love supposed to make you feel alive? Or had they both become too comfortable, too safe, too silent? The next morning, she watched him leave for work. He kissed her forehead, like always, gentle and familiar. But when the door closed behind him, she felt something shift deep inside her. Something was changing, and she didn't know where it would lead. Emma stood by the window long after his car disappeared. The world outside was bright again, washed clean by the rain. But inside her, the question lingered. What happens when the person you love needs to chase something that doesn't include you? And for the first time, Emma realized that sometimes love isn't about holding on tighter. It's about having the courage to listen to the wish that could change everything. She didn't know it yet, but Daniel's wish, whatever it was, would test every part of her heart. And the choice she'd soon make would define their story forever. For the next few days, Emma felt like she was living inside a question she couldn't answer. Daniel's words from that rainy night replayed in her mind, "I have a wish I never got to live." He hadn't said exactly what it was, but the way his voice had trembled told her it was something big, something that scared even him to admit. She tried to go about her days as if everything were normal. She made breakfast, walked the dogs, went to her part-time job at the local library, and smiled when neighbors waved. But underneath her calm surface, her thoughts were restless. Oh, wait. If his wish meant leaving, what if it meant he wanted a life different from the one they'd built together? The questions followed her everywhere. By the fourth day, she couldn't hold it in any longer. That evening, when Daniel came home from work, she waited until after dinner. The fire was burning again, just like that night, and the glow from it painted their living room in a warm orange light. He looked tired but peaceful. "Daniel," she said, her voice steady but soft, "I need to know what your wish really is." He set down his mug of tea and looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, as if he'd known this talk would come. "I've thought about it every day since I told you," he said. "And I realized it's not just a wish. It's something I need to do before it's too late." Emma's heart started to race. "Tell me," she whispered. He exhaled deeply. "I want to take a year off," he said. "A year just to travel. Drive across the country, see new places, meet people, maybe even work odd jobs along the way. I've always dreamed of doing it before you. Before my job, before all the responsibilities. But I never did. I thought once we settled down that dream would fade. But it hasn't." Emma blinked, trying to process his words. "A whole year?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes, I want to go alone. I don't want to make plans or schedules. I just want to wake up and decide where to go next." I don't know if that makes sense, but it's something I've needed for a long time. Her mind swirled with emotion. She wanted to be angry, to ask why she wasn't enough to make him feel alive. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something else, a quiet desperation. He wasn't asking to escape her. He was asking to find himself. For a while, neither of them spoke. The sound of the fire filled the silence. Finally, Emma asked, "And what about us? What happens to us while you're gone?" Daniel's voice broke slightly. "That's what's been tearing me apart," he said. "I don't want to lose us. I love you, Emma, but I feel like I've been living half awake. I need to know who I am when I'm not following the same routine every day. I need to remember what it feels like to live without structure, to just be." She looked down at her hands. Her wedding ring caught the light. She turned it slowly between her fingers, her thoughts spinning faster than she could control. A part of her wanted to say no. To tell him that marriage meant choosing each other every day, not walking away to find answers somewhere else. But another part, a quieter, wiser part, understood. Love, she realized, wasn't about owning someone. It was about believing in them enough to let them grow, even if it meant standing still while they wandered. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. Clock ticked softly. She imagined Daniel out there somewhere, driving under open skies, chasing the feeling of freedom. It terrified her. But what terrified her more was the thought of him growing old with regret. The next morning, she stood by the window while he packed his briefcase for work. Her heart pounded as she finally said it. "Daniel, if this is really what you want, then go. Take that year. Find what you're looking for." He froze, turning toward her, disbelief written all over his face. "You mean that?" Emma nodded, even though her eyes burned. "Yes, because if I stop you, you'll always wonder what could have been. And I can't live knowing I kept you from something that mattered to you." Daniel set down his briefcase and walked over to her. His eyes were shining with tears. "You'd really let me go?" he asked quietly. She smiled sadly. "It's not about letting you go. It's about loving you enough to let you find your way back." He pulled her into his arms and held her tightly. "You have no idea what this means to me," he whispered. "I do," she said. "Just promise me one thing. Come back." Daniel kissed her forehead. "I promise." The days that followed were filled with quiet preparations. Daniel applied for an extended leave from work, serviced his old pickup truck, and started mapping out possible routes across the country. He packed lightly, a few clothes, a camera, a notebook, and his favorite guitar. Emma helped him fold his shirts, pretending not to notice how her hands trembled. Each night, they had dinner together like always, but every conversation felt tinged with the knowledge that soon the chair across from her would be empty. Sometimes she caught herself studying his face, memorizing the curve of his smile, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the sound of his voice when he said her name. When the day finally came, the morning sky was pale and clear. The dogs sat by the front door, sensing the change. Daniel loaded his last bag into the truck and turned to her. "I'll call when I can," he said. She nodded, her throat tight. "Just be safe, and don't forget where home is." He smiled gently. "I could never forget." They stood for a moment that felt both endless and fleeting. Then he leaned in, kissed her softly, and whispered, "Thank you for saying yes." As the truck pulled away, Emma stood on the porch, hugging her arms around herself. The sound of the engine faded down the road until there was only silence. Inside, the house felt larger and emptier. His coffee mug still sat on the counter. His jacket still hung by the door. She ran her fingers over the back of his chair, feeling the echo of him everywhere. That evening, she sat by the window, the sunset painting the sky in gold and pink. For the first time, she let herself cry. Not because she regretted her choice, because love sometimes means doing the hardest thing, letting someone go so they can return whole. Over the next few weeks, she tried to keep herself busy. She went for long walks, joined a local art class, and even started volunteering at a community center. The loneliness was still there, but it carried a strange kind of peace. She knew she had done the right thing. Sometimes, late at night, she'd receive a short message from Daniel, a picture of a mountain view, a diner meal, or a note that simply said, "Thinking of you." Each message reminded her that, though he was far away, Their love was still quietly holding on, stretched across the miles, and deep down, Emma believed that one day the road would bring him back home, not just to her, but to himself. The first few weeks after Daniel left were the hardest Emma had ever faced. The house felt too quiet, the mornings too long, and every evening too still. She had gotten so used to their small routines, his laughter in the kitchen, his shoes by the door, the sound of his voice calling her name, and now all of it was gone, replaced by silence that seemed to stretch endlessly. At first, Daniel called every few days. His voice was full of energy, excitement, and curiosity. He told her about small towns, kind strangers, and sunsets that stretched for miles. He sent her pictures, a roadside diner with neon lights, a lake that reflected the sky like glass, an old bookstore that reminded him of where they first met. Emma smiled through tears every time she read his messages. She could feel the happiness in his words, and even though she missed him terribly, she was glad he was finally living his dream. But as time passed, the calls became less frequent. A few days turned into a week, then two. His messages grew shorter, sometimes just a few words. Long drive today. Beautiful sunset. Miss you. She told herself not to worry. He was busy exploring, probably losing track of time. But deep down she could feel the distance growing, not just in miles, but in the space between their hearts. Emma tried her best to fill her days. She kept working at the library, joined a small book club, and spent weekends gardening. The neighbors were kind and often invited her over, but she politely declined most of the time. It was hard to laugh when part of her was missing. At night, she would sit at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring at the chair across from her, the one Daniel used to sit in, and imagine him sitting there again, telling her stories about his travels. One evening, while sorting through old photos, she found one from their first anniversary. They were sitting by the lake, their faces lit up with happiness. Daniel had written on the back, "No matter where life takes us, I'll always find my way back to you." Emma held the photo close, whispering to herself, "Please keep that promise." A few days later, she received a long email from him. It had been almost a month since his last proper message. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "Emma, I've been meaning to write for weeks. I've seen so many places, met people with stories that made me think about our own life. I've realized something. I've been taking your love for granted. You gave me freedom without question, and I didn't see how rare that was. Every sunrise reminds me of you. Every quiet night makes me wish you were here. I'm learning a lot about the world, but mostly I'm learning about myself." Emma read the message over and over again, her eyes filling with tears. It wasn't a promise or a plan, but it was honest, and that was enough for her. She wrote back, keeping it simple. "I'm proud of you, Daniel. Keep going. I'm here." Months passed. The seasons changed. Summer faded into fall, and soon the air turned crisp. Daniel kept sending short updates, pictures of forests, letters from small motels, sometimes even postcards with just a few words. But then winter came, and the messages almost stopped. Emma tried to stay strong, but there were nights she cried quietly, wondering if the distance had turned into something permanent. One snowy evening, she went outside to feed the dogs and saw the mailbox flag raised. Inside was another letter, this one handwritten, not typed. She rushed back inside, sat by the fire, and tore it open. "Emma, I saw something today that reminded me of us. An old couple walking hand in hand down a snowy road. They looked so peaceful, like they had been through everything together and still chose each other every day. It made me realize what I've been missing. This trip was supposed to help me find something new, but what I found was what I already had. You. You've always been my calm in the storm, my home. I thought I needed the world, but I only needed to see it to understand what really matters." Emma's tears fell onto the paper. She pressed the letter to her heart, whispering his name. For the first time in months, she felt a spark of hope, real, steady hope. After that, his letters became more thoughtful, deeper. He wrote about learning to slow down, about sitting by campfires thinking of her laughter, about strangers who reminded him how lucky he was to have someone waiting for him. He wrote about small towns where people lived simple lives, not chasing more, just grateful for what they had. Each letter made her heart ache, but also heal a little. Emma started writing back regularly. She told him about the garden she'd planted, the neighbor's new baby, and how the dog still waited by the window every evening. Her letters were warm and calm, full of quiet love. It became their rhythm, his letters from the road, her replies from home. One night, round Christmas, Emma sat by the fireplace reading one of his newer letters. He had written, "Every road I take, every sunrise I see, leads me back to one thought. I don't just miss you, I need you. You're the reason I want to come home." Those words were all she needed. She closed her eyes, smiling through tears. For months, she had wondered if letting him go was a mistake. But now she knew it wasn't. Sometimes people have to leave not because they've stopped loving you, but because they need to remember why they love you in the first place. Still, the waiting wasn't easy. There were nights she'd wake up, reach for the other side of the bed, and feel only cold sheets. There were mornings she'd sit by the window, watching the mail truck, hoping for one more letter. But with each day, her faith grew stronger. By the time spring came, it had been almost a year since Daniel left. Emma had changed too. She was stronger now, still gentle, still loving, but more grounded. She had learned to be her own company, to find small joys in quiet things. One morning, as she watered the plants, she found another postcard tucked under the door. It was a picture of a wide open road under a golden sky. On the back, in Daniel's handwriting, were just a few words. One more stop. Then I'm coming home. Her heart skipped a beat. She stood in the sunlight, holding the postcard tightly. Smiling through tears, in that moment, she realized something beautiful. Love wasn't measured by how close to people stood, but by how strong the bond remained even when they were far apart. The distance had tested them, changed them, and maybe even hurt them, but it had also taught them the meaning of love that lasts. Emma looked out at the bright horizon, feeling a quiet certainty settle over her heart. He was coming home, and when he did, their love would no longer be about the routine they once had. It would be about the journey that brought them back to each other. The morning Daniel came home began like any other. The air was soft and cool, sunlight spilling gently through the kitchen window. Emma brewed her coffee, the smell filling the quiet house, but her hands trembled just a little. It had been nearly a year since he left, a year since she'd stood on that same porch watching his truck disappear down the road. Now he was finally coming back. She had read his last message at least 20 times. One more stop. Then I'm coming home. It had been 3 days since then. She didn't know the exact hour he'd arrive, but every sound, every car on the street, every creak in the house made her heart race with hope. She'd tried to stay busy. The garden was blooming beautifully now. Her roses had grown tall, just the way Daniel used to like them. The dogs waited by the window, sensing her excitement. But as the hours passed, her mind filled with questions. Would he be the same man? Would he still want the same life? Would they be able to pick up where they left off, or had time changed everything? By late afternoon, the sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and orange. Emma stood on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. When she heard the sound she'd been waiting for, the soft rumble of tires on gravel, her heart jumped. She turned, and there it was. Daniel's old pickup truck, dusty from the road, rolling slowly toward the house. She froze for a moment, her breath catching in her chest. The truck stopped, and Daniel stepped out. He looked different, leaner, his face slightly tanned, his hair longer, and a bit of gray at the temples. But his eyes were the same deep blue that had always seen her in ways no one else could. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The air felt heavy with everything they hadn't said for a year. Then Daniel smiled, a small, uncertain smile. "Hey," he said softly. Emma's lips trembled as she whispered, "Hey." He walked closer, stopping just a few feet away. "You look beautiful," he said. His voice was gentle, full of warmth and something else. Gratitude, maybe. "You look tired," she said, her tone light but caring. He laughed, the sound rough but familiar. I am. The road's long, Emma, but it led me back here. For a moment, it felt like time had paused. She wanted to run into his arms, but she also needed to look at him, really look, to make sure this was real. You're home, she whispered, as if testing the words. Daniel nodded. I'm home. They stood there, both quiet, both a little unsure of what to do next. Then, slowly, Emma stepped forward. Daniel met her halfway, and when their hands touched, the distance of a whole year seemed to dissolve in an instant. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her tightly. She felt his heartbeat, strong and steady against her cheek. I missed you every day, he murmured. Even when I thought I needed space, I missed you. Tears spilled down Emma's face as she whispered, I missed you too. But I'm proud of you, Daniel. You found what you were looking for. He pulled back slightly, looking into her eyes. I thought I would, he said. But what I found instead was you again. Everywhere I went, every sunrise, every long road. It all pointed me back to you. You gave me freedom, but you were still my home. Emma felt her heart swell. All the fear, the waiting, the lonely nights, it suddenly made sense. She had loved him enough to let him go, and that love had brought him back. They went inside together. The house looked almost the same, but Daniel noticed small changes. New photos on the wall, a different lamp by the couch, a few more books on the shelf. Life had moved forward, but it had also waited. I kept everything just the way it was, Emma said softly, setting down his bag. Except the garden. That grew no matter what. Daniel smiled. It's perfect, he said. They sat down in the living room, the fire crackling like old times. Daniel leaned back, taking it all in. You know, he began, I thought I needed to see the world to feel alive. But what I really needed was to remember why life mattered in the first place. I met so many people out there, people chasing something, just like I was. But most of them were searching for what they already had. Emma listened quietly, her eyes never leaving him. He looked different, yes, but there was a calmness in him now, a stillness that hadn't been there before. I learned a lot, he continued. I learned that freedom isn't about running away. It's about being honest with yourself and still choosing to come back to where your heart belongs. Emma smiled faintly. And where does your heart belong? Daniel looked at her eyes, soft and certain. Right here, with you. She felt tears rise again, but this time they were tears of peace. Then let's not waste any more time, she said. He reached across the table, taking her hand. No more running, he promised. The night settled around them, quiet and warm. They talked for hours about his travels, the people he'd met, the lessons he'd learned, and about her days at home, the moments she'd spent waiting and hoping. It wasn't the same as before, it was better. They were both a little older, a little wiser, and much more grateful. Later, they stepped outside onto the porch. The sky was filled with stars, the kind you could only see clearly after the rain. Daniel looked up then at her. You know, he said, when I was on the road, I kept looking for the perfect view. But none of it ever felt complete. I think it's because you weren't there to see it with me. Emma leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. Maybe now we can see the world together, she said softly. He smiled. That's the only way I want to see it. They stayed like that for a long time, saying nothing more. The night air was cool, but there was warmth between them. The kind that only comes from two people who have walked through distance, doubt and time and still found their way back. Before heading inside, Daniel turned to her one last time and said, You said yes to my wish. That yes changed my life. But what really mattered was that you waited, that you believed in us, even when I didn't know how to. Emma's voice trembled as she answered, I didn't wait because I had to, Daniel. I waited because I believed you'd come home. Love doesn't end just because someone takes a different road. It just waits for the right turn. He kissed her forehead gently, whispering, Then this is our new beginning. That night, as they lay side by side again, Emma felt an overwhelming peace. The road had tested them, stretched them, and taught them what love truly meant. Not comfort, not habit, but faith. Real love wasn't about never leaving. It was about always finding your way back. And as Daniel drifted to sleep beside her, she smiled quietly, her heart finally calm. She had said yes to his wish, but in the end, that yes had brought him home in more ways than one.